Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our read-through of Sacred and Terrible Air by Robert Kurvitz. We're going to start on Chapter 5 today, so let's get into it. 5. Za-Um. Annie Ellen Lund takes off her sunglasses and is blinded by a flash of light. The green, yellow, blue color splash in the girl's irises scatters across her pupils. Her smoky eyeshadow sparkles in the light. Her deft head turns like a kitten's. The solar reflection jumps from her girl's magazine to the sand, from the sand to the parasol, as the girl follows it with her eyes. "What's going on?" Therese asks, dangling his feet over the edge of the cliff. "I don't know. Melon is also there now. She's standing up." "I can also see that she's standing from over here," Khan interrupts impatiently. "She's standing, and I've got to admit she doesn't look too bad in that red swimsuit. Two-piece, as is their custom. And, she's still... Fuck." The arch of Melon's mouth in the binocular's eyepiece turns to a grin, an evil flash of teeth. Her hand raises from shadowing her eyes to a demonstrative wave above the head. The image disappears as Jesper hides the treacherous lenses under his stomach. "Down! Get on the ground!" Khan hears blood rushing in his ears and feels a vein throbbing under his arm, his body pressed halfway into a prickly rosebush. Therese, who in his haste simply flopped onto his back, is looking up into the pale end of June sky. High above him, a lone white-tailed sea eagle glides on the breeze. It seems as if the bird is just hanging in the air. "Khan, look, an eagle." "What fucking eagle? Ow!" The rosebush suddenly reminds Khan of its presence. "Don't twitch, you're shaking the bush," Jesper grumbles, lying between them with the binoculars underneath him. "Well, if they already saw us, it doesn't much matter if I shake the bush or not. Listen, you gotta check and see what they're doing." "See for yourself." Jesper slides the binoculars over to Khan. The bush shakes again as Khan, in his baggy summer shirt, drags himself out. He gets up on his elbows and carefully crawls toward the cliff edge, binoculars in hand. With them raised to his face, he tries to remain invisible by hiding behind a tuft of grass. Quickly, the binoculars shift to focus on a parasol with red flowers on the beach below, stopping on the beach towel. There, to Khan's astonishment, little Madge is sitting by herself and looking somewhere ahead. A drop of sweat falls on Khan's glasses. Sensing something bad, he scans closer and closer to the foot of the cliff, until, barely 100 meters away, small theater binoculars appear, looking directly back into his lenses. Slender Charlotte, the eldest of the sisters, stands there, her other hand on her hip. Her shoulder-length, dirty blonde hair flutters in the breeze. This beautiful and terrible creature from the 9th grade is about as far from Khan's immigrant grasp as a seat in Parliament. And now she stands so close that even as she holds out the theater binoculars to Malin, her gaze still bores directly into Khan's distraught eyes. Into his eyes, which he now hides, rather than enhance them with his binoculars. "My God, they also have some kind of small binoculars with them," Khan informs the emergency meeting. "That's what they pointed in this direction yesterday. I knew I should have said something." "What, Therese?" Jesper suddenly gets angry. "They know then, and you just let us walk right into their trap." "Oh, sorry, I forgot. I thought that maybe they were looking at that eagle. You know, he also has his nest right here, near the rock." "Shove that eagle up your ass." Of course, Khan starts to laugh out loud at this, and Jesper continues. "Now we have nothing left to do but get up from here and wave back, and that's all. I don't know what we're going to say about this fucking binocular situation. I really don't know." "I've got an idea." Therese stands up determinedly, and Khan grabs at his pants. But soon enough, the 3 skinny-legged girls giggling on the beach see a skinny, blonde-haired guy awkwardly get up next to Therese, and then, after a moment, a slightly overweight chap from Ilmara joins them. "Hello, girls," Therese shouts. Malin gasps and covers her mouth as the tall, slim figure jumps down from the cliff, 4 stories high. The next morning, 20 years later. The wrinkles of fatigue in the corners of the man's eyes curve around his cheekbones. His cheekbones create 2 sharp peaks under his eyes, just like a bird of prey. Furrows on both sides of his cheeks. Wait, worry. ICP office blinds have long been drawn over his hazel eyes, and no one has the heart to look in, to peer behind them. This ICP agent also has a freshly shaven chin that juts forward a little, and a long gray neck, skin worn from smoking, against a white dress shirt. A thin black tie hangs from the collar. The rain had stopped overnight, but it's still cold and windy. With his left hand, he pulls his coat collar closed. With his right, he smokes. In the bow of a small border guard ship, a young Vasan officer stands next to Therese with a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. "What's in Kronstadt?" he asks. "Unfortunately, I can't answer that question," Therese mutters mechanically, his eyes fixed on the autumn morning horizon. A flock of seagulls rise from the reeds at the docks and screech across the cold water as the boat's engine revs to a start. A splash of fuel oil forms a chemical rainbow in the tin-like water. "Coffee?" The young man tries to pick up the conversation again. "No, thanks." Therese feels a drop of water on his face. Refreshing. The sun is not yet visible in the low gray sky this morning. Only specks of airships circle above the city, and the steel silhouette of the great Grad cruiser hangs like a spectre in the bay beyond. "Yarn spoken," they say. "Iron ghosts." No one likes these ominous ships here. Ghosts out of place. On guard, but for what? Who has declared war on whom? No one. Nor will Grad win any hearts here with its steel umbrella, and Therese, who in the eyes of an ordinary northerner looks, talks, and smokes like a Grad man, would not get far here with his talk about motherland, Zemsk, the 100-year occupation, and the Yugo-Grad massacre. Yes, and also FRANTIČEK the Brave. Of course he wanted to be like FRANTIČEK the Brave. He still wants to. All Kokyos want to be like FRANTIČEK the Brave. Take positions, rise up, once again raise the flags of the time of Sigismund the Great. Daring, the joy of life like the rattle of a speeding troika. What happened? A lone border guard ship makes its long streak across the North Sea. The boat sways quite violently in the waves, and soon Therese has to throw away his cigarette so as not to slip on the deck. The poor smoking conditions make shivering outside pointless, so he goes inside to sit hunched on the cabin bench. Moreover, he tries not to look to the other side of the city, down the meandering coastline to where Charlottesville remains. God, how he would like to go. Once he came 4,000 kilometers from Grad on a magnet train through the Pale, didn't call either Kahn or Jesper, went straight to Charlottesville and hung around like an idiot. Then he went back home. Another week through the Pale. They had still been quarreling over the restaurant thing with Jesper, and it seemed pointless to just hang out with Kahn. This had been his winter solstice vacation 2 years ago. Such was his holiday. The department's psychiatrist banned him from traveling for a year. Apparently, it is dangerous to go through the Pale so often. Tourniquet between his teeth, Matijek inserts a syringe made of glass and metal into a clearly drawn-out vein on his wrist. But he would still like to see how the cattails bend in the wind. It is so peaceful to watch the ocean wash up on the beach, quietly and peacefully. Somewhere in the colorless distance is the silhouette of the cliff and cold water, raindrops. It's beautiful to look at. Therese's veiny hands gently caress the black suitcase in his lap. "Hadramat Karsky," shouts little Inayat Khan from the edge of the cliff, and jumps. The sun is shining. There is a tickling in the pit of his stomach, as if there are still 100 meters to go. But the fall only lasts a moment. The sand meets him suddenly. After a few rushing seconds, he digs his heels into the sand, and the sliding slows down. Little Con feels a root sting in his butt and stones scratching his back. His shirt is untucked from his trousers, his glasses bounce off his face, and the jubilant, freckled Therese rushes to catch them below. The girls run towards his battered body. "You're crazy," Annie exclaims from afar. So he has reason to rejoice as well. But not little Jesper. He's up there by himself now, looking back and forth between the steep drop, his white pants and his sailor shirt. No. He smacks his lips with amused stubbornness, packs the backpack left behind by Con, and takes a longer route through the forest. He walks at the fastest possible pace, which is a not yet undignified trot. From the footpath covered in pine branches, the boy turns onto the suspension bridge between the two tall trees, and then goes down the stairs on the other side to the boardwalk. The journey down to the beach seems to take forever. He is already fearfully thinking about the nonsense that stupid Con is probably spouting. How is he supposed to play along now without coordination? Only after half an hour does Jesper reach the beach, and throws up his arms helplessly next to the girl's empty beach towel. "Sorry, did you happen to see where those boys who jumped down from there went?" He points in the direction of the towering cliff in the background. This old man was asked to look after the girls' things. Jesper decides that wherever they are, they can't be gone for long. Having baked in the hot sun for a moment, he sits down on the flowery beach towel. After debating with himself whether he should take off his shirt, it's getting really hot, he still decides in favor of taste, and lies down on his back on the towel looking as cool as possible. The coolness lies in that indifferent pose where his arms are crossed under his head. Jesper is more interested in these clouds right now. He's deep in thought right now. He thinks. And then a tiny atomic unit of perfume seeps into his nose. Maybelle's breath, human skin explode before his eyes. Jesper turns his head, and over the beige of the beach towel it shines, the fragrant and strange world of girls' things. There are white and pale pink bowed summer dresses folded together so terribly neatly, little belts and useless trinkets, Annie's fine bracelet, and basket-weave beach bags holding just the kind of food girls like. Jesper doesn't remember anything about the food that girls like, but it's certain that there's not much of it. Girls don't like to eat. That much Jesper knows. In foolish fascination, he raises his hand to a little bottle sticking out of a small handbag. The fragrance oil bottle is in the shape of a pomegranate. Golden liquid flows behind the crimson glass facets, and Jesper looks on, spellbound. The world disappears. Still holding the bottle in his hand, he doesn't even understand why, but his hand secretly slips a small hair tie into the breast pocket of his sailor shirt. He throws himself on his back again and looks at the sun through the glass of the bottle. A timeless moment is suspended in the raspberry-red world of the pomegranate, until, suddenly, as if out of nowhere, Charlotte's long legs tower over him. Little Madge looks directly into his eyes from Therese's shoulders. "What is he doing with your bottle, Annie?" Fiery synapses in Jesper's head begin to make connections as soon as the spell is broken, and he doesn't let his surprise appear on his face. "Revecholier," he pronounces lusciously, and then finishes like an old pro. "Granat, number 3. Very good choice. Strong notes, natural. The juniper berry gives a kind of airy matte finish. No, very good choice, what can I say? Yours, Annie?" Jesper sits up, quiet and undisturbed. Con and Therese look excitedly in the direction of the girls, especially Annie, who is licking her lime ice cream with a smile. "Mine, yes," she says, a little cheekily at first, and then becomes more polite. "Your mother works at a perfumery, doesn't she?" It's more like she imports rather than produces, recently. But she's got papers and everything. You know, I've been to the Revachol perfume factory to see how Granat is distilled. You've been to Revachol? Even Charlotte is impressed. At school, she is something of a goddess, a grade above them with her expensive clothes and high school boys. And now, The goddess's eyes widen in surprise. Jesper's ears start burning. Once, yes, my mother's co-workers invited her there for an excursion. Therese, who in the meantime has held the flag oh so high, thinks that now that the greatest danger is past, Jesper should be brought back down to earth. That'd be why you smell like a flower. Little Madge on Therese's shoulders laughs at everything the boy says. He got lucky in that respect. Therese never would have thought that he was a child magnet, but now this and the adventurous jump have already kept him afloat for 3/4 of an hour. Con is completely useless. He catches every third pass from Therese, but then he can't do anything with it and just makes noises. Annie sits down on the towel next to the blushing Jesper. I think Jesper smells good. Not at all like socks or that changing room. That place of yours is really awful, says Malin mildly. Honestly, it's all von Versen. Con now gets his first point across. Versen has these PE socks. It's not normal the way they smell. Therese breathes out a sigh of relief. The queue for ice cream was already quite drawn out. Neither Con nor Therese are chatty guys in an emergency, and Therese's plan was to bury any talk of the binoculars under perfectly picked, eloquent words until Jesper's arrival. Luckily, Madge came to the rescue by begging to sit on his shoulders and chatted non-stop so everyone started laughing. Now Therese feels that it is time to get it out of the way. He lifts Madge off his shoulders and blinks meaningfully in Jesper's direction, mentioning as if in passing, You took all the stuff with you? The smokes, the binoculars? Annie Lynn doesn't go for the smokes hook. What were you doing with those binoculars over there? We already saw yesterday that something was flashing all the time, like a small mirror. It was exciting. Just bird watching, you know. There's a pair of white-tailed sea eagles nesting there. Therese can barely get started when even Malin flashes a wicked grin. Bird watching. Annie laughs next to Jesper, and Charlotte, the wicked goddess, is even sharper. Isn't this bird watching popular among gentlemen these days? Jesper blushes, but somewhere in the freckled abyss of FRANTIČEK, FRANTIČEK the Brave raises his bold head. It's time, and already he is rushing out of Therese's mouth, all caution thrown to the wind, towards the brightest, most unlikely of prizes. As we Kokyos do, it's all or nothing. Kolabechko moya. The whole of Therese FRANTIČEK turns into a single, charming burst of laughter. Well, I guess we saw even rarer birds. More often than not, all or nothing means nothing to us dirty Kokyos, but not that day. On that hot, sunny day 20 years ago, Charlotta. Her shoulders move forward, collarbones come forward. Beneath her arched eyebrows, a smile. The light of a distant star gleams for a microsecond in her cold green eyes. For Therese, it says, a chance. Therese is so happy. Everything is going so well. The shadows grow. Hours pass. The white sand turns yellow, then orange and streaked with shadow. The girls put the beach towels on their shoulders. Little Madge yawns and falls asleep under the blanket. The wind dies down. All becomes quiet. A kingdom. Horse-drawn trams line up at the stop in the background. The echoing screeches of those tracks. Distant music from someone's yard. The beach empties, and the sky becomes a blue-violet gradient. There, Therese tells the girls about his father's diplomatic summer house, his summer plans, about the next day. The changing room shadows grow into ghosts and creep like clock hands on the beach. Bands of clouds rise above the smooth water, their bellies curdled purple, the horizon tinged with cyan, magenta, cooled down deep orange. Malin tries on Con's glasses. Con can't see anything behind Malin's big black sunglasses. Only the girls' figures, their head-spinning figures, flutter like an upside-down candle flame. Bring some apple cider, shouts Annie Ellen from the door of the last tram. 4 pale horses neigh, the cabin glows yellow in the twilight, and little Madge, in a white dress with angel wings, sleeps in Malin's arms. A kind fairy godmother's star-shaped wand falls from her hand, onto the sandy floor of the cabin. The three boys stand at the stop and make gasping faces at each other as the tram rolls down the slope. Warm, sour breath makes the white hotel linen flutter against the linoleum salesman's mouth. Linoleum salesman. Linoleum salesman. Linoleum salesman. With his left hand at his nape, he pulls the double loop of linen into a knot around his neck. The knot is intricate and extremely well tied. The 8th floor balcony door is still ajar, and cool air is seeping into the suite of the Havsunglar Hotel. From the balcony there is a magnificent view down to the late evening beach. On the reed floor of the balcony lies a camouflage-patterned telescope, detached from the base, with a reflective shutter. Scout model. Behind the telescope is a modified photo camera. On the balcony, and only on the balcony, not in the adjoining room or the hallway, because that's not the way the linoleum salesman likes things. So it's only on this balcony here that he hears the intense wheezing of evil. 20 years later, in the evening, Vidkun Hird stares, distressed, at the droopy ICP agent standing in front of the barred window of the interrogation room. Despicable. Hird wears his gray prison jumpsuit. Vidkun Hird is written on the reflective strip, along with his number and a letter abbreviation. The ICP agent takes off his jacket and drops it carelessly in front of the window, shirt with sweat stains under the armpits. The agent's movements are uncoordinated. On his chest is a freshly printed badge with a guest identification number. The fan hums. "Look, you're inebriated." Vidkun looks over his shoulder at the officer standing guard at the door. "The smell of booze is overwhelming. Please take me away from here. I'm not in the mood." Vidkun smiles and listens to fragments of Majicek's conversation with the officer. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a child's life is at stake. The door closes behind the guard, and a suspiciously constructed key flashes in Teresa's hand for a moment. Majicek, Vidkun pronounces. A kokyo through and through, like a Gavril mongrel, some kind of second-rate lower life form. Hird's hands and feet are both in cuffs this time, the massive irons pinning his hands awkwardly behind his back. But despite this, he lounges almost nobly. You lied. Who did you get the drawing from? Teresa's eyes are cloudy. He blinks angrily. Listen, have you heard of that eugenics study that praises the humble mind of the kokyo? Who did you get the drawing from, pig? The scholar, you know, recommends in there that your people should be crossed with kipts to become superworkers. Shut up. Therese pulls the steel curtains on the windows of the interrogation room. Sudden. The shiny blinds fall with a crash, and immediately there's the sound of the officer's keys jingling nervously through the keyhole. Idiot. You want to go to prison, don't you? We follow the Declaration here. We don't have some kind of Grodian anarchy. In the windowless room, in pure iron gray light, Therese Majicek stands and opens his suitcase on the table. Inside the lining fits exactly one iron box, with Za written on it in white letters. Hird's sunken eyes come out of the depths of their caves in horror. There is a banging coming from behind the door. You don't have a permit for this. You must have a permit. Show me your permit. What did you say? I can't hear you. Some pig keeps squealing. Therese hits Hird in the face with the iron box. A thick stream of blood flows onto the chest of the prison jumpsuit. Hird whimpers. At the base of his nose, in the middle of the red jelly, a small bit of white bone protrudes. He faints. The officer's muffled threats sound from behind the door, but Teresa's diamond key rattles in the keyhole. I am International Collaboration Police Agent Therese Majicek Marovograd. I have the legal right to conduct interrogations, and if you keep fucking with that door... The knocking stops for a moment, and the Zaum clicks open. Everything goes quickly, proficiently, one might say. From the foam padding of the box Therese pulls out a yellowed tube with cannulas hanging from the end. He fastens a hideous, accordion-like device around his wrist with a belt and tightens a rubber tourniquet around Vidkun Hird's shackled arm. With a slight twist, he screws the hose onto the apparatus and then plunges the needle into Vidkun's vein. A tiny red spurt of Hird's superhuman tendency flows directly into the cannula. Running footsteps can be heard from behind the steel-curtained window. Heavy boots on the prison floor. Reinforcements. The lid of the device snaps open on FRANTIČEK's wrist. A row of ampules appear, full of yellow liquid like the yellowed teeth of a smoker under the upper lip, in a mouth stretched out like a smile. There's a quiet hiss as the first ampule clicks into place. The bellows on the lid shudders for a moment, and then the apparatus on FRANTIČEK's wrist begins to breathe softly like a pet. The piss-yellow liquid is pumped into Vidkun Hird's wrist. The man snaps his eyes open and starts to gasp in panic. "You know what this is? It's a waste, you swine." Therese hisses between his teeth, right in front of Vidkun's swollen face. A little blood and saliva splashes from the man's mouth onto FRANTIČEK's face as he rolls his eyes in fear and cries, "I lied. You're right. I've never seen them. My cellmate." "I don't care what you think." "I don't think anything. I'm telling you, I had a cellmate several years ago, Derek." "I don't care what you think. I want your truth." Therese's eyes are bulging and terrifying. He yanks the tourniquet from Vidkun's arm, and its veins, swollen from the mescaline solution and lysergic acid, visibly begin to open. Suddenly, Vidkun clenches his teeth so hard that it seems as if they'd break at any moment. "You can't get anything from me. Now you can't get anything from me." He squeezes madly. "I am so strong." A battering ram sounds from behind the door. "I really like that you think so. It's best if you think so." Therese gasps and screws the second cannula to the device. It's for him. With his eyes fixed on his wrist, he jams the needle into his vein. The first ampule is empty. The next one Therese shares with Vidkun, agitated and stuttering. "It's a meat grinder. You can't imagine how I'm gonna fuck you with it right now." The urine-yellow liquid breaks through Vidkun's blood-brain barrier, and a huge pressure builds up in the top of his head, inside his skull like an air bubble. With the man's face clenched in his hands, Therese starts to scream. His voice pops into Hird's head like a white noise, pure screaming violence. "I'm making you into a cretin. You're feeling it." Vidkun's pressurized skull yields to the force of the agent's hands, snapping open like a flower blossom. It seems as if something is born from there. Vidkun's handcuffs rattle helplessly. He tries to grab hold of the living coagulation that is coming out of his head. Still, pieces of his brain fall through his fingers to the floor. He can't. It's too slippery. There's too much. "I can see into your cunt head. You're open in front of me. I'm going to open you up." Therese gasps and watches as the whole of Vidkun Hird gapes in front of him. The man writhes under the agent's sharp fingers and tries his best to speak, to tell him what he's looking for, to say it in human language. But his mouth won't produce it anymore. And during all the time that Therese wades in his head like a tiger in water, in all that time, Vidkun only sees one image from the Therese mirror. There, on the cool surface where Vidkun escapes from the devastating butcher's work in his own head, Charlotte Lund's dark green eyes gaze at him. In the depths of her pupils shimmers the chance Therese was given. It is so beautiful and so profoundly sad that when Therese collapses, screaming behind the interrogation table, Vidkun begins to cry. The coast of Vasa sparkles before him, and beneath his feet the night waves break on the bow of the border guard ship. A yellowish dome of light pollution glows above the city in the background. It seems indescribably joyous, all those white and yellow city lights fitting in the palm of Therese's hand. And even though it's cold outside, he's not wearing his coat. His jacket is wide open, and Vidkun Hird's blood is splattered on his white dress shirt. The ICP agent has his hands comfortably handcuffed. The young officer helps him stay upright on the deck. What kind of racket were you causing there? The officer asks. If I wrote you a symphony, sounds from the rattling transistor radio inside. Listen, thank you very much for letting me out here. It's a beautiful evening. Okay, the officer begins to laugh softly. If you don't mind, could you turn up the song? What? I promise, I won't jump overboard. Turn it up. I'm more worried that you'll fall overboard, but all right. The officer steps into the ship's cabin and onto the deck. A massive beat is heard of the noise of the waves and the sound of the engine, and a man's falsetto says, If I wrote you a symphony to show you how much you mean to me. Teresa's foot begins to tap, with the kind of relief he only feels after using Zaum. He sighs to the officer. You know, I just solved the disappearance of the Lund children. The what? You don't know then? But it's very famous. When was that? A long time ago. You weren't even born then. But it doesn't matter. I feel so good inside right now. I think I might have solved it. Therese laughs. This laugh is gloomy, but sincere. Very sincere. And the night over the North Sea laughs back at him. Six. FRANTIČEK the Brave. Sometimes, the disappearance that gets solved is the saddest of them all. In the pre-hydroelectric era, when the Paramanaya Vera was simply the Vera River, operetta star Nadia Harnankar threw herself into its streams. She was at the peak of her popularity. That could have been the end of it. One autumn evening after an intoxicating performance, Nadia just disappeared, her heavenly soprano voice still echoing in the halls of the opera house. Was the old man who saw her walking to the bridge in an evening dress lying? Or maybe the fan who claimed to have met her in Revachol a year later? Perhaps there was some truth in the book, written by a paranoid master of pulp novels, in which Nadia is actually a spy for the Mesk, a nihilist, and the destroyer of the world. Who could know? But one thing is for sure. No one wanted the remains of Nadia's evening dress to appear out of the muddy sediment of the lake. There was no need for the colony of river mussels in the eye caves, the gold-toothed smile of demise, the stunned expressions on the faces of the hydroelectric station's construction brigade. Failure. Failure shapes the world. History is the story of failure. Progress is the succession of failures. Development, says the futurist. Loss, states the rebel. Hangover, cries the moralist from the back row. Failure, the rebel gets angry. Time is pale, he says. The failure of the creator. An introduction to an era. Krasmazov shoots himself in the head. And Abadanias, together with Dobreva, takes poison on the Ozone Islands. Beneath the palms, the wind blew the flesh from their bones into sand. Who could have known? All the good people in the world came together. Teachers, writers, migrant workers squatting in the trenches, young soldiers abandoned their battalions. What beautiful songs they sing. It seems to them that brave children are the favorites of history, as they wave white flags with a crown of silver horns. And then they lose. Coups are suppressed. On les immensités bleues, anarchists are piled up in mass graves. The communist, defeated on the Grad Isla, retreat to the backwater degenerated bureaucratic worker state of Samara. The disappearance of the revolutionary lovers resolves 35 years later, when the embracing skeletons of Abadanias and Dobreva are found on the beach of one of the nameless Ozone Islands on a Saturday night outing by Eugene, the 8-year-old offspring of the great banker Riche Le Pomme. In shorts and holding a butterfly net, he stands and looks intently at the bones of the past as they cling to each other, faded and smooth. Where does one begin and the other end? Time has shuffled them like a deck of cards. Afterwards, Riche will erect a hotel there, along with a now world-famous spa. But The biggest of the failures isn't how Mazov's world revolution became a bloodbath and then a loss, nor how the bones of lover rebels are now being displayed in the waiting room for aromatherapy. Its internal unrest subdued, Grad became a world power, a giant state. Its cities proliferated, and from orbit the light of this tumor shines like an entwined, sparkling thread. Entire nations are vanishing from the world map. Countries in which Mazov once had many supporters, countries like Zemsk, countries whose people have been called kokyos as a derogatory umbrella term, and that for so long that eventually they even started calling themselves that way. Therese Machajek is 7 years old. His exemplary kokyo father, a diplomat and moralist bootlicker, has not yet taken him to school in Vasa. The city/zone of ecological catastrophe, the post-megalopolis and pre-necropolis of human settlement, the penultimate stage of development, the polyfabricate, stretches along the border of Zemsk and Yugograd. The monstrosity absorbs the historical centers of Zemsk, the royal old town of Ferdydurk, the pine tree parks of Lenka. Summer begins, and in the dingy cellars one name is whispered. Children shout it in the courtyards of houses. The leaves of the trees rustle with tension on the quiet streets. It's merely an echo of the name that rings in the ears of the Grad militiamen. FRANTIČEK the Brave. He is the bravest of the kokyos. Movie star, revolutionaire. Not long ago, at the end of spring, civil unrest had been brutally suppressed, and he has not been heard from for 2 months since. It is said that he roams the distant taiga on the Yucatan Reserve and is acquiring special abilities from the shamans of the vanquished natives. Fantastic things. He has the cheekbones and longing gaze of a steppe eagle, a gentle smile, as if the sun was rising above the taiga. This smile he saves only for those rare occasions when his serious eyebrows aren't furrowed from worry. His heroic face appears in forbidden films in a knitwear factory, where the women are bold, where the white screen is stitched together from tank tops and underpants. No, FRANTIČEK the Brave is in Samara. He is in negotiations. He will come with the troops of the People's Republic. Don't be naive. FRANTIČEK is roaming far and wide in Katla, in winter's orbit, staying in the hut of Ignis Nilsson. They will never find him. Shh. FRANTIČEK the Brave would never hide. Only yesterday he was seen in the queue for meat. He now has a false beard and a butcher's apron, and he called himself Vozem Sark. Read it backwards. But months pass. There is no news, and soon autumn will come. Industrial haze like a mourner's veil drapes on top of gold and red leaves. In October, a completely different story begins to circulate in Zemsk, in quiet and timid tones. FRANTIČEK the Brave was shot behind a waste disposal facility. Seven. The world is going wrong. Time is out of joint. In his bed under the basement window, Inayat Khan has been tossing and turning for an hour already. It's getting dark outside, and the pale light of the streetlight seeps into his room. It's chock full of junk, as if frozen in place. Dust particles shining in the blue-gray beam of light from the window. On the tables, under draped cloths, rest the muted forms of disappearance memorabilia. There are dark squares of picture frames on the walls. The shadow of the display board falls on the floor and dissipates. In the place of honor in the middle of the basement, a glass display case shines gently and invitingly. Small bric-a-brac sits and waits on many, many shelves. Wake up already, dear collector. How much longer will you be lounging around? We know you're not sleeping. Khan's fingers fumble over the bed's headboard. He jostles things around and searches for the button on the tape recorder, not really making much of an effort to find it. It seems suddenly that it would be more pleasant to curl up under the covers instead. Pedestrians' shoes click on the damp pavement outside, coming home from work, and Khan makes a desperate effort to catch a few more Z's. Bah, at least try a little, say Khan's exciting toys. Let us hear your fun wake-up song. The atrophied heart muscle in Khan's chest starts to hurt from the lack of effort, and nothing will come of trying to keep sleeping. His hands reach for the headboard again, a finger moving along the ivory keys of the tape recorder. Under the drop cloths, breath is held in anticipation, and then there is a click, and before the soft arpeggios of the guitar, before the soft timbre of the old-fashioned electric organ, the tape crackles for a few bars. It's been a long, long, long time. How could I have ever lost you? A loud pounding drum break and a bass come in from the left channel. When I loved you. In his pajama pants, Khan sits up to the sound of rolling drums. Pushing aside the snakeskin-like sheets, he slips his feet into his little pointed toe cotton slippers. His jowls with their unkempt beard shake in one last yawn, until he widens his big, almond-shaped eyes and puts on his glasses. He ruffles his hair and begins to lazily sing along. He has a beautiful voice. It took a long, long, long time. Now I'm so happy I found you. His hairy belly slightly hanging over his pajama pants, he plays the next break on his personal air drums. How I love you. And presses the switch with his foot. Old light bulbs click on and off in sync with the drum beat. The filament buzzes for a moment, and then goes out. The dodecahedron, autographed by the unknown missing dodecaphonic composer Comte de Pérouse Mitresi, sinks from golden light back into darkness. When the bulb lights up again, the title on the spine of a book emerges from the haze. Los Desaparecidos. So many tears, I was searching. So many tears, I was waiting. The place is energetic, singing loudly and shamelessly. Khan moves through the basement with the air of a performer. A row of ceiling lamps brings the carefully arranged stuff on the tables into view. Wooden filing drawers rise in alphabetical order. There is a portrait of Nadia Harnankar in an oval medallion on the wall. Then, a map of the Arab desert, with Ramut Karzai's supposed route to the dunes, where he asked God for an audience, with pins marking where he could have had the mysterious end to this journey. Khan pulls the coverings from the tables as he passes, and mystery after mystery unfolds before him. Ceres dragons carved on gold and green ships, a row of 12 miniatures barely the size of a palm, rows of oars in dark blue artificial sea with white cresting waves. The papyrus yellow sails of the small ships are proudly lowered. Men in reed armor stand on board, pennants fluttering on their spears. This is Gonzu's 1,000-man expedition. At the order of the Emperor of Safra, they sailed east from the coast of Samara more than 3,000 years ago. They are looking for peaches of immortality for the Emperor, and they are bound never to return. After 2.5 millennia, signs of their settlement are found in the east, on the Anis Islands. All things considered, the Gonzu expedition could never have returned. The Emperor was cruel and ill-tempered, an absolute ruler, and there are no such things as peaches that make you immortal. All these beloved objects, trinkets, things left behind, somehow they touch Khan, and how it stings. How odd. He's never quite figured out what it was. But even so, that smile tugs at his lips, like a big fat cat being scratched behind the ear. On the stand above the desk, in the pale light of the green table lamp, everything is about the girls. Newspaper clippings, a mess of notes, and in the middle, copies of Malin's letters. In a rare case, the handwriting analysis reveals a 95% overlap. The letters arrived to the girl's parents 1.5 years after the last day in Charlottesville. Everything is fine. We are with the man, says someone who says she is Malin. We love you. Khan puts a coffee pot on the portable stove, and the song's outro reverts to being soft and smooth like the beginning. This is his favorite part in the whole world. He could listen to it forever. He shakes his head with a bitter smile and puts his hands over his heart. Now I can see you, feel you. How did I ever misplace you? The screeching of wheels can be heard outside as a car stops in front of the house. Rain starts to patter softly on the basement window. The tape recorder makes a click, and the song ends. There is a calendar on the door where no one has bothered to turn the page for 2 months. It's still August, and under the 28th is written International Day of Missing Persons. It is precisely in their honor, on the 28th day of August. This is the day. Innie, your friend Jesper is here. Brush your teeth first. Con's mother calls from upstairs in the kitchen. Con pulls a frayed bathrobe on over his pajama pants and trudges up the basement stairs. Our anchor stands in a display case in the middle of the room. 2 years ago. Crystal goblets ring. It's the usual Saturday night hustle and bustle at the Telefunken Tower restaurant. Beyond the panoramic windows lie Vasa, a smooth ghost, darkness, snow, and lights. The prices here are expensive, but not expensive in a tasteless kind of way. It wouldn't work if they were. The clientele has too much social aptitude for that. The food is 5 stars, but the company, even higher class. Look, there's the president of the communications board with his wife, and the CEO of FRANTIČEK having dinner with a charming singer, Pernilla Lundqvist, and a Vespertine businessman. The charming singer eats a salad with olives. The CEO suggests that the Vespertine business partner gets crab. It's exquisite here. You have to try it. And him, over there, next to that bearded professor, isn't that Conrad Gessel, 4-time Oscar Zorn nominee, a very intelligent man. FRANTIČEK's CEO wears pea black, of course. Distinguished. And look, there's a 30-year-old loser. The loser lives in his mother's basement. The loser wears the same light blue ruffled shirt he graduated secondary school in. We hate you, loser. Who let him in? It's so sad to see. He must be on a date. So pathetic. This woman hasn't said anything to him for 10 minutes. Listen, what a silence. I'd hang myself. Maybe if I gave him some money, just a little bit, like 10 real, maybe it would be easier for him. Disgusting loser. Don't give him anything. I hate him. He'll definitely not get the bill paid. Certainly can't. Hysterical laughter. This wine alone is like 40 real. Ha ha ha. I hate you, loser. Die. I hate you so terribly. Con sweats again and tries to cover his ears with his hands, shaking his head, blinking his eyes, whatever it takes to end this storm of humiliations, until suddenly, silence. A brunette woman with sharp features is fingering a wine glass across from him. The boredom is palpable. The woman glances at the panoramic windows, then to the criminally elegant dark brown table under her hands. Then, suddenly, a flash of thought. It is a very beautiful place. They have a new design here, I guess. I remember the last time I was here, everything was completely different. Clarity comes into Con's eyes. Yes, my friend did it. He likes this kind of stuff. Minimal, clean. I don't really understand how it was exactly, but I think he invented it. He's quite famous. De la Garde? Jesper, yes. You know him. He's so talented. Yes. Of course. Jesper and I have been friends for a long time, even before he became famous. To be completely honest. Con smiles nervously. I probably wouldn't have gotten any reservations here either if, well... I thought so. Thought what? Con asks. But the brunette woman doesn't answer. It's quiet again. Con looks across the floor at the guests, who, for a moment, do not seem to be talking behind his back in contempt. In the distance, at Conrad Gessel's table, he sees a woman introducing a skinny man with blonde bangs to the documentarian. The waiter also notices his fine-mannered presence and rushes to serve the gentleman the usual, ice water with a lime wedge. In a dark grey suit cut to the waist, with a lime wedge between his teeth, the gentleman looks very young and somehow elegantly sleep-deprived. The chic with which a plain t-shirt shows under his jacket is enviable. He can afford it. The shirt features a famous dance artist's iconic album cover. "Jesper," Khan shouts across the tables in an inappropriate voice. His date gets a little startled, and then looks questioningly in the direction of Gessel and Jesper's table. "There he is," Khan says happily, as if relieved, to the brunette across the table. He stands up so his friend can see him better. "Jesper, come on." Like this, with sweat stains on the armpits of his ruffled shirt, he stands in the middle of Telefunken's panoramic restaurant and watches as Jesper furrows his eyebrows in annoyance, then shrugs in Conrad Gessel's direction. He pretends not to know him. Ow! It's a hot Saturday afternoon, 18 years ago, and a rose thorn has scratched Annie's thigh just below her short skirt. The girl angrily steps out of the bushes, and Dr. Jesper rushes to her side. "What happened? Let me take a look." Annie lifts her skirt a tad and then gives up. It's nothing. Stupid bushes." "Oh!" She cuts off halfway through the word, the shape of her mouth rounded on the sound. "So pretty." "Pretty," little Jesper agrees. He can still see Annie's leg in his mind's eye, the pleated edge of her tennis skirt rising up. Con pushes the bushes aside, and Charlotte and Malin step into the cliff's edge, mouths agape. "Really? I can understand why you come here all the time. The wind is so cool." The breeze sweeps Charlotte's dark blonde hair in front of her eyes. She squints, carelessly pushes aside the lock of hair and says, The wind tears white petals off into the air. It seems as if little Madge, in her winged dress, is floating above the rustling bushes. She draws shapes in the air with her fairy godmother wand, and feels like the most important person in the world. She sits on Teresa's shoulders. He wades through the thorns, not minding them one bit, and sets Madge down on the grass, smiling mischievously past all the scratches. The salty gust of wind subsides, and the syrupy scent of flowers fills the air. Insects buzz. The 7 of them can barely fit on the grass in the boys' secret hideout. That's how it was planned. At any rate, Jesper is very satisfied. The boys couldn't sleep all night, chuckling, making plans for the next day, conspiring. You could say that the mood was high. Therese was against coming to the cliff because of the long journey and the thorns. Jesper, along with Con, thought that it was still the best place. And it was. The girls are impressed by the view. Con introduces the classification, pale penetration power and capacity of the antique Grad cruiser glimmering on the horizon. It seems like Malin hasn't started yawning yet, and the best thing, even though it's windy, the weather is still warm enough that Annie wants to sunbathe. Malin unwraps the beach towel and ends up next to Con with the chatty Madge. Con is straining his memory, but unfortunately he can't find any other interesting things to say about antique airships. Let Therese and Jesper field the conversation. He lies on his back and closes his eyes. The orange flicker of the sun, the sound of water, and the rustling of percussion instruments cool quietly, and in Con's popular science dream, a cosmic autumn orbits above him, and the vibration, as always. It's getting cold. A faceless, bottomless epiphany sprawls behind the backs of the giants. Forgotten high in the sky, these ancient communication satellites calibrate their rusty bellies toward the curvature of the earth. Catapult-like joints swing into position. Boulders screech like a flock of storks at the edge of the stratosphere. Communications units rattle into the ether. A cluster of compound-eyed measuring devices looks down to where the southern coast of the Katla Isola blooms in a brief burst of summer. This piece of land, like a beautiful dream, snoozes amongst the chilled cradle of vertical motorways and the pale's 1,000-kilometer arcs. The past, approaching, all-consuming. The pale is all around. but the dark green forests and the white strip of beach, the sparkling North Sea mirroring the sun, the Vasa archipelago, and little Charlotte's yawl still endure. And the less matter remains, the smaller a space you squeeze it into, the more strangely it sparkles. The 7 of them lie atop the cliff in a semicircle on a green cloth, with the waves breaking below. The sky above is a fluffy Vai Fran et Luftslott, its cloud cities reflected in the curvature of Khan's glasses. He opens his eyes. Charlotte Lund, made wholly of scented stuff, pulls her summer dress over her head in one snappy movement. Her curves and smooth tanned skin are visible. Therese can feel the slenderness of her joints. It bothers him. It's hot. Annie is ashamed of her birthmarks and lies on her back with sunglasses as a headband. Jesper dares not say anything about it, although he would very much like to see them. And Malin, modest, just unties the bow on her dress to feel the wind flowing in from under the skirt. The fabric of the dress flutters like a sail. Cider. Therese, who has stripped to the waist, announces in a stately manner, and indeed, out of the gloom of his backpack, a cellar cooler comes into view, a container that was seized last night in an unprecedentedly complex operation. 3 liter. Drops of water shimmer on the glass. The hermetic cap hisses open, and a small vapor of carbon dioxide rises from the mouth of the bottle. The apple cider fizzes and foams from the bubbles. The girls' mouths are on fire. Only little Madge looks confused and drinks her lemonade with pieces of lemon. Therese carefully places the cold bottle against Charlotte's hot cheek. His father finds out the next weekend that the cider is missing, when he wants to offer it to gallery owners and curators of the cultural cooperation at a garden lunch. But Therese doesn't care. Look how beautiful she is, Charlotte, and how happy. And besides, his father is an academic capitulator, an exemplary Kokyo, and a moralist bootlicker. FRANTIČEK the brave wouldn't think much of him. "Why are you being so quiet?" Malin asks quietly, so the others don't hear, and turns to lie on her side facing Khan. Annie perks up. "It's strange that you should say that, Saki." "Oh, shut up." Malin laughs a soft, warm laugh, and Khan can feel brushing against his ear. "Talk about something. You always have such awesome presentations in history and science classes." In his heart, Khan jumps up from behind his school desk and punches the air triumphantly. "Yeah, that story about peaches was really cute." "Annie, don't interrupt." Malin frowns. "Wait, what peaches?" "Tell that one, Khan. It's super cool. That Ilmara with the fleet and emperor." Now Khan finally opens his mouth. "Wrong Isola, dude. Samara." "Well, sorry. I didn't mean it like, in a racist way." "Very funny, Jesper. Anyway." Now Khan also turns towards Malin, just a little, carefully, as to not make any contact. "You were sick that time, I remember." Khan remembers very well. He wanted to postpone the presentation so that the performance would not be wasted, but the teacher didn't understand the subtleties of the situation. "In Samara, more precisely in Safra, peaches have an important place in mythology. If the Anise Islands have cherries, Safra has peaches. They grow wild there. You can pick peaches in the forest. Cultivated apricots, peaches, and nectarines, they all come from Samara. Even now, a lot of fruit is brought to us from the SRV through the Pale." Malin nods studiously. "So, once upon a time, when Katla was not even inhabited, the Emperor of Safra sent his most famous explorer, Gonzu, to bring back peaches of immortality." 20 years later. The city of Vasa glows blue. Königsmalm streets during rush hour, the glow of lanterns with diddery-dada detailing. The dark gray dome of the sky and the crowd in colorless Nordic clothes passing below it, like a migration of ghosts from a Suez fairy tale. Therese's head is spinning. It's been so long since he last had a smoke. His head is dull and throbbing, nicotine presses on his eyes. Sounds are distant, muffled. He sits down on the steps in front of the police station, coat sleeves tucked under his bum. A slight drizzle of rain dampens his sleep-swollen face. 5 minutes ago, his clothes had been thrown in his face, and he was released. The last shreds of the dream still linger, echoing in the back of his head. The monster slips along the rippling waterline, just below waking, a throbbing headache. Danger, he usually responds. He is made of violence, but sometimes he says he is a man. He parts the rose bushes and watches them on the cliff top. He is always there. He wants to tear them apart, but he waits patiently. In the pine forest where he had blown smoke rings, Therese sees him sneaking from tree trunk to tree trunk. He crouches on the edge of Khan's binoculars. Down on the beach, little Madge in his lap. Madge falls asleep, and the doors of the horse tram close. He is engulfed, bottomless. Nothing stands under him, and everything could collapse inside him at any moment. His days are numbered. The rest of his life is coming soon. Wrong and terrible. Then, when they go into the water at the girls' secret beach, in the dizzying darkness of their last night, he comes to their beach towels and sniffs their things. The man gnaws on a meat pierogi and looks at her from behind the sunshades. Therese is Agnetha, the cashier at the ice cream shop, and from the corner of his eye, he sees a new face on the man every time he passes by the window. He wears Vidkunhirt like a costume, or a grown-up Khan whom Therese now fears for some reason. Or sometimes he's Therese's father. Therese will be embarrassed for the rest of the day when he sees his friends, but he can't help it. Slowly, timidly, he makes his way through the crowd, afraid to bump into someone, to anger someone. People in dark clothes flow along the street. Traffic lights glow at a large intersection, and motor carriages stop. Puffs of smoke rise from mufflers, engines thump. At the intersection of the pedestrian crossing, he goes along with the swaying mass, and above him, panels of light shine in the dimness. A giant lingerie model smiles high up on the wall of the department store. The rows of payphones glow. When Therese steps into a booth, it really starts to rain outside. The booth's windows drip, and somewhere in Vidkunhirt's memories, or in his own jail dream, Therese isn't sure, a monster crouches over the girls and puts their torn bodies back together into chimeras. You know, the slushy snow creaks under the wheel of the taxi. The granite pavement crunches. Khan looks out the window. One thing I didn't mention earlier about myself. The car stops in front of his home in Salem. The brunette woman holds her handbag in her lap. The man opens the door on his side. It doesn't usually come up, it just doesn't, but you should know this about me, that, in fact, he steps out, leans back into the cabin. I am the world's leading expert in the field of disappearances. Khan slams the taxi door shut behind him, takes 3 steps across the pavement onto the outside staircase, slips the key into the slot, and steps into the hallway of the wooden house. The starting crack of the engine can be heard coming from outside. The machine kicks off. It is dim and warm inside. Potatoes are boiling in the kitchen. Mom, it went terribly. Khan picks up the phone receiver. The apparatus hangs on the wall, with numbers pinned nearby on the wallpaper with nopkas. Absolutely terrible. Don't even ask. His yellow fingers jump on the keys. A series of 16 digits, an inter-isolary connection, at the expense of the respondent. Mr. Ambart Sumyan, I was given your number from an auction. Mr. Ambart Sumyan is not available at the moment, comes the voice of the male secretary, quietly, from a distance. No, you don't understand. I'm calling about Hard Anchor. I need to get the manual for my airship. This is very important. I'm sorry, can you hear me? The phone hisses. The call is fading into the pale. The noise of time. 2 years later. Have you heard anything about Therese? Jesper asks as soon as he enters Khan's hallway. The sweet smell of poverty fills his nose. What is this? Some kind of cinnamon? Expired bread? No, I don't know anything. I was just about to ask you. This kind of stuff, I have to say, it worries me. Con leads Jesper straight to the basement, his bathrobe flapping about. Clothes, he says, pointing to the rack above the stairs. Jesper is uncomfortable. The same weird smell as in the past. He can't bear it. He would rather live on the streets, would rather burn all this trash than settle for such a stench. Above all, he fears that Con's poor old mother will pop up from somewhere at any moment. But Con had insisted, adamant, let's do it at his place. He doesn't feel like going downtown, let's do it at his place or not at all. Jesper hadn't felt that he could argue the point, given his past transgressions. With a heavy heart, he takes the last step to the basement. But then, on seeing the spectacle spread before him, the little boy in him wins the day. Oh, yep, not too shabby, you would say. I would say. Jesper's big head spins at the end of his neck. Oh, he shouts, Gonzu. He taps the man standing in the bow of the first vessel of Sapphire's fleet with his index finger. A minuscule Gonzu, barely the size of a fingertip, and with long drooping whiskers like a Samaran dragon, holds a pennant bearing the Emperor's coat of arms. In the little man's other hand is a compass the size of a pinhead, a miracle device that he is said to have invented himself. It all came together a year ago. You remember last time I only had the ships ready, not even painted yet. Con stands proudly in the middle of the room. Wait, what is that? Jesper points to the gleaming display case behind him. This is my crown jewel. This is the apple of my eye. Jesper, this is the Harnankar. An original? Jesper reverently steps toward the display case. Of course not, don't be naive. That would cost more than you, laughs Con with the superiority of a professional. This is a copy, one of two. The fragile silhouette of Harnankar stretches behind the glass of the display case. Jesper strokes the case, taller even than him, and looks for the light switch. Look, there under the edge, under the base, a big switch. When Jesper switches on the lights, it's not the display case that turns on, but instead 10 floors worth of bright lights on the antique airship. The model hangs in the middle of the display case on invisible strings, like a swan made of silver and lacquered wood. On the first-class bridge, behind the crystal glass walls, small chandeliers shimmer through the 4-story hall. The tiny people motionlessly descend the spiral stairs. She looks so light, crushable. The silver arches straighten like sails on the ship's hull and converge at the bow into the coat of arms of the Empress of Shest, a nickel swan. It's bewildering, to imagine they thought something like this could pass through the Pale. Look, here are the decks. Con is overjoyed that he can finally show it to someone. Decks. These little baskets here, open-air decks. Silly stuff. Hanging out in the Pale with your gal. Honestly, I could stare at it all day. I can empathize. Well, it can't be, come on. Well, it's not too shabby. Jesper walks around the display case and shares his discoveries with Con, who sits in an armchair next to the model, as if he hadn't stared at it every day for the last 2 years. Sit there, there's a particularly good view over there. He points to the chair. Jesper is too excited to sit. Wait, the propellers, do they? Now, go back to that switch, won't you, and push it forward a little more, says Con with a cheeky smile. Jesper puts his hands on his head and his mouth falls open. The swan's large silver propellers, sharp as knives, 3 per side of the belly of the ship for maneuvering, pointing towards the ground at different angles, plus 2 even bigger ones at the stern, begin to rotate, quietly at first, and then with an increasingly loud hum. The individual blades disappear, leaving only shimmering, hazy discs. The propellers are so large and so dynamically directed that Jesper gets the impression that the ship will take off from the display case any moment now and fly away, disappearing from space and history. On the hull of the ship, in the Gradian alphabet, in a beautiful italic font, Harnankar. Jesper unscrews the cap on his water bottle, and Con makes himself coffee. They are sitting by the display case in armchairs, looking at the ship. The interior designer again has that same foolish hope that Con sometimes manages to infect him with. Still, In his bathrobe and pajama pants, the lazy cat sips his hot coffee, and Jesper stares at him in surprise. "It's 7 o'clock. Don't tell me you were asleep." "Slightly depressing, I know." "That it is." Jesper laughs a black laugh, and stops for a long moment to stare at Harnankar. "I don't understand. Why wouldn't he call? Therese, I mean, straight away, yesterday. This is my second sleepless night in a row. It's starting to piss me off." "I'm not tossing and turning or anything. I'm like this, nocturnal all the time. A bit of an artist type." Khan smiles. "Maybe he learned something from here and jumped right in." "Then you don't believe that, well, Heard himself? Did something? Hardly. Fantasy. You can't even imagine how much these fellows can lie. I did 10, I did 100,000, I did more than Erno Pasternak. They're all about numbers and fame. But this drawing was 1-to-1, I know. That. Something should still come from that. Something. Yes. Jesper stands up and takes his messenger bag from the rack. But I don't think that Therese is fishing anywhere. As far as I understand, we kind of have, an agreement that when it comes to the girls, we'll do it together. Yes, Khan agrees, but from the corner of his eye, he is still peering at Harnankar with mysterious absent-mindedness, until a soft black package lands in his lap. Look, a female friend gave it to me. She must have thought I had gained weight or something. Should be a good fit for you. Colin pulls out a brand new Perseus black dress shirt from a package labeled PB. Hey, thanks, man. He is sincerely grateful. You can throw the ruffled rubbish away now. Therese's potato-colored Kokyo hair is wet from the rain and almost looks black. Excuse me, you wouldn't happen to have change for 10 real? He crouches behind the kiosk counter in his long coat. A teenage girl chews gum indifferently. No, I don't. Very well. I would like the cheapest thing you have. A box of matches, for example. And please give me back coins. Sorry, sir, we don't sell matches. There is nothing more obnoxious than a whining teenage girl. The girl stretches the toothpaste blue gum between her mouth and fingers. What the hell? A pack of Astra, then? What? Astra. What's that? A lollipop. Give me that lollipop over there now. A raspberry-flavored lollipop with a caramel swirl clacks against FRANTIČEK's molars. He deposits the coins into the jingling payphone. There is a sweet smell of rain in the booth. It's beautiful to watch how water streams down the glass. Therese likes it at the booth. The lollipop is good, too. Good thing there were no matches. With the hearing tube tucked between his shoulder and his ear, he turns the payphone dial. His head has cleared substantially. The caramel is sweet, and the raspberry is tart, the way a raspberry is. For fuck's sake, that Jasper is never at home. On the table, under the apparatus, a notebook with the International Collaboration Place emblem is open at phone numbers. Therese's rain-wet fingers leave stains there. K, Cabraleva, Khan. The wheel rattles again, and behind the glass in the grey glow of Vasa, dozens and dozens of people come out of the door of the department store, and dozens more enter. The Fry Bank Sea Eagle glides above the bank on a lit sign, which glows golden and steams in the rain. Hello, I'm looking for Eniat Khan. You're Therese, or? Khan's mother's worried voice rattles through the earpiece. Yes, ma'am. Is Eniat at home? Listen, Therese, you always listen to me, don't you? Don't torture yourself with this again. You know, the other day I saw the girl's mother. Yes, of course. Listen, madam. And we ended up talking a little. Yeah, in one ear and out the other. Khan's mother's story is a mood killer. Ma'am, please tell Eniat that I'm calling. It's urgent. I'm sorry. Mother, who's there? Comes Khan's call from afar. Therese, or? No, this is Pernilla Lundqvist, one of your many admirers, says the older woman, with nobody is listening to me sarcasm. Running steps are heard on the basement stairs, and cars whiz by. Water splashes against the phone booth door. Therese. Hello, Khan. Listen, where is Jesper? We're in a hurry. Here, Jesper's voice sounds out from afar. It's me, Jesper. There's nothing better when suffering from a Zoom hangover than the lively voices of your friends. Listen, hurry over to the city, to Lovisa, the old people's home, Skimning. Look it up somewhere, I don't know, in the phone book. Visiting hours end at 8 o'clock. Okay, Skimning, what's there? Derek Trentmuller. And I think the Kexholm Circle. Therese, the Kexholm Circle's an old wives' tale. It would be better if it were. Why do you think it isn't? Jesper tries to fit himself behind the phone. Con asks him why he thinks it isn't. Why do you think it isn't? Listen, we'll continue talking when we're there, all right? Okay, we'll take a taxi. Jesper, do you have taxi money? I do. Okay, we'll take a taxi. What follows is again only the mass and weight of time, the space between places. A taxi ride, pedestrians in dark clothes, grey skies and puffs of smoke on the motorway. Therese Matchajek. Autumn days like a smooth queue of traffic. Yes, Con's mother saw the girl's mother in the doctor's waiting room. What of it that these are her 4 daughters? Who is she anyway? Losing all your children one day, can you imagine what that must be like? But tell me, what has this woman done to find them? Why does it matter that she has found her peace? Con's mother's voice rattled through the earpiece. If the girl's mother can come to terms, can't you? No. Look, we are Mnemo tourists. We love the girls. Yes, I dare say, and we love them more. Even this present moment, the evening city gliding past the taxi window, where the world is going wrong and time is out of joint, is a crime. This needs to be righted, to be solved. No peace, no truce with the Furies. And listen, traffic whizzing past the side window, distant trumpet blasts, long notes shifting out of place. Expectation. An hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. This evening, tomorrow morning, next week, winter, spring, a year, the next year, 10, 20 years. Out of time, as if from a cloudy sky, there are crackles. The summer rain wants to be freed. Guys, a little memory tour. Why are you faffing around and pouting there? You're a great Mnemonic tourist. Aren't you? Some explore the pale between the islas. Entrepreneurs, they are called. And some discover new lands. They are explorers. But you, Mnemo tourists, when sadness creeps up again, leave behind the burnt shells of your present and dwell in the days of wonder once more. And there is a stuffy, pre-rain heaviness in the air. Sand martins swoop over the water, catching insects. Jesper watches them appraisingly. At first, only a single heavy drop falls. Nobody notices. It's still so hot. The sun shines like a white pebble between the clouds, and the archaeologists of Safra are setting off to the Annis Islands to look for traces of the Konsu expedition. But Jesper knows what's coming. Such raindrops always spy on Katla from the summer clouds, and Jesper also knows what time to turn on the radio in the morning. Today's weather, said the reporter. It's all part of the plan. Con shuffles closer to Malin as he talks. He can already feel how the edge of her puffy skirt tickles his calf. The others listen to Con's story, but Jesper is taking the beach umbrellas out of the bush. He unbuttons the girls, and just as a rumble of thunder rolls through the sunlit cloud cover, he opens the large beach umbrella on the cliff. Annie, in front of her crossed legs, raises her head and laughs. A curtain of rain, sparkling in the sun, drums over the beach and the cliff. At Jesper's signal, 2 more umbrellas open. Con opens his without interrupting the story, and Therese's covers both Charlotte, who is listening on the palm of her hand, and the ostentatious little Madge. Madge has braided the boy's grown-out hair into a small, spiky pigtail. The maneuver is executed brilliantly. The knights just smirk at the girl's laughter. So warm. Touch it. Annie puts her hand out from under the shade into the rain's piano strokes. The curve of her spine arches in front of Jesper. The boy mutters something and stares in fascination at the galaxy of birthmarks on Annie's delicate, kitten-like back. His hand would like to reach out, count the stars. The dusty smell of rain seeps deep into his nostrils. How long is the exposure time of a memory? Oh, Annie stretches out her neck and shakes her head in the rain. You are all completely different when you are not at school. Uh-huh, Malin nods in agreement. Prepared. Kind of like parents, wouldn't you say? Therese raises a questioning eyebrow at Charlotte. Listen, I've only seen you once in the lunch line, giggles the girl and chews her straw, sticking out of a glass of sparkling apple cider. I really can't tell. Well, Therese was still a boy then, Jesper teases, but now he's a man. Malin laughs. There's so little space under the third shade that she has to pull herself into a ball. A golden crown of hair slumps onto Con's knees. Rain patters on the beach umbrella. The girl tilts her head back and looks at Con in a long and strange manner, her dark green eyes shimmering. Con swallows. Malin is the only one of the girls who doesn't want cider. How does the story end? Even her voice comes from a strange place. Why didn't they come back? Well, that's the question, Con coughs. Why didn't they come then? Malin suddenly begins to giggle, her teeth showing evilly with the joy of discovery. They didn't want to give their pages of immortality to the stupid emperor. Dummy, Con accidentally blurts out, there are no pages of immortality. Charlotte sits up. But maybe there are. How do you know? You think that it was just like that? That Gonzu and those 1,000 sailors didn't dare to come back because the emperor would kill him? But if I were Gonzu... Charlotte looks at little Madge and draws herself dragon's whiskers with her fingers. And I found peaches of immortality. I wouldn't tell anyone. I would share them secretly, only with my best friends. And then we would sneak around the world together for 1,000 years. And let's see what miracles people come up with. Would you also give me immortal peaches, Lotta? Little Madge looks up at her oldest sister. Of course. When you get older, I'd give you some. Why do I have to get old? So that you wouldn't be a young girl forever. Not such a little brat, Charlotte chirps. She can't be. Therese shakes his head and looks at how terrible Charlotte's hair sweeps her shoulder like a brush, chin proudly raised. Can't be that terrific. Con and Jesper, horrified by Therese's sudden change in strategy, are speechless. Charlotte exhales, her rib cage slowly shrinking. Cheek capillaries explode. Therese just looks at her. What about me? May I also have some peaches that make me immortal? We'll find out. The girl smiles and collects herself. But first, you should bring me something. You just say what? Con sees Malin secretly exchanging glances with girls out of the corner of his eye. Something is happening. Annie pulls her tennis skirt up her tanned legs. Next time is our turn, isn't it? And our spot. Don't think we don't have our own secret place. Her eyes flash at Jesper. What are you doing on Saturday? The boys do nothing on Saturday. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Let me check in my notebook. Nothing. We're arranged for a week in the countryside, on the flower beds. Annie's back arches. She lifts herself up on her wing bones and slips the hem of her skirt over her butt. But we could meet on the beach on Saturday night. Sure thing. No, sure thing, 100%. The boys chant in unison. A purse jingles in Charlotte's hand. Once again, the girl's eyes are reflected between the boys like trigonometry. The rain subsides, individual drops still shining. The bright sun comes out from behind the clouds, and the goddess from the 9th grade stretches in its rays, puts her hands on little Madge's ears, and then looks at the boys with squinting eyes. This is half. Bring cherry speed. What? Says Jesper, mouth agape. Cherry speed, Annie articulates, the tip of her red tongue forming the D in the word on the roof of her mouth. It's sort of like amphetamine, Charlotte says, as if it's self-explanatory. The curves of her chest rise and fall as she breathes while speaking. Only that it's sort of special. It's very good, and we want to do it together with you. Silence. Rain-soaked rose bushes steam in the sky. The sea eagle hangs motionless. Madge will definitely stay home, won't she? Funny pigtails still stick up all over Teresa's head. Con and Jesper see him putting the astro in his mouth next to Charlotte. Of course, dumbass. Divide, then, he says. Let's do it. Malin smiles, boundless joy shining from her eyes at Con. In a matter-of-fact way, as befits a teacher's daughter, she begins to give instructions. Inside the wallet is Ziggy's number. Call him then, won't you? He'll have some.